Well, hello, everybody. This is Timothy Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, in your ears and on your laptops. For episode number 317, our guest is going to be Kai Carlson-Wee. In the second hour, we're also going to announce our new prompt poet of the month. So do sit tight for that. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on that like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. Now we're going to start out like we always do with our Poets Respond poet. And we had a really interesting, fun, kind of clever one this Sunday from Mary Pecault. And Mary is here. Hey, Mary, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great to see you. And I'm so glad you could share this poem with us for Poets Respond. Can you tell us what the poem is about, first of all, and how the entryway into your poem?
So I follow closely the news in the U.S., and I was deeply disturbed when the East Wing was knocked down. But I also wasn't surprised. And so when it happened, I just had this reaction of connecting architecture with a very public marriage. And that was the entryway to this poem.
Yeah, well, it's one of those topics, we got a lot of poems throughout the last few weeks about this topic of the East Wing of the White House being demolished. And it seemed people were hard to find a way to find the poetry in it, So you came up with this metaphor as the marriage being like architecture. Did that thought occur to you before you started the poem or in the process of putting it to paper?
It was almost immediate. I kind of see the world in metaphor anyway. And so when it happened, it was connected immediately to me that, of course, he destroyed the East Wing. And of course, that's where the first lady of the country always has their office. And so it felt kind of personal that way. Yeah.
Well, why don't you go ahead and read the poem, Mary?
Okay, thanks. Separate quarters. After the East Wing renovation 2025. Italicized quotes from Donald Trump. Two structures standing through the same weather. A marriage is like architecture. The husband, gesturing toward what he calls theirs, says, "It won't interfere with the current building." As if a wife were an adjacent building, model of a historical artifact, maintained from across the colonnaded distance. As if a crumbling marriage might block the sun's trajectory, cast shadow on the other's facade. She has her wing, he has his. It will be near it, but not touching it. It pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite place. I love it. Her sun-filled space raised, concrete dust, twisted rebar. In its place, his ballroom made for spinning, as if she might finally take his hand. While the orchestra tunes, she'll stand at the threshold, wide-brimmed hat casting calculated shade, near but not touching. Proximity without friction, the dream of every architect and every husband who lives a parallel life. The distance she's been building. Hands do not converge. Absence has its own blueprint, its own load-bearing walls.
Yeah, well, really well put. Thanks so much for sharing that, Mary. And it is a topic, it's one of those visuals, just seeing the East Wing being torn down, that's sort of loaded with symbolic meaning. And it's so great to get that symbolism into a poem in a way that expands our understanding of it. Thanks for being here and sharing that with us, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, that was Mary Pecault with Separate Quarters. That was Sunday's poem on Rattle.com. If you have a poem about current events, anything that's happened in the last week, all you have to do is submit it through Submittable. Go to rattle.com and find the Poets Respond section. Find the link there to Submittable. Then upload your poem by midnight Friday night, and we'll publish one every Sunday about current events. It's our way of keeping poetry relevant and part of the conversation. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Kai Carlson-Wee. So sit tight and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, today's guest is Kai Carlson-Wee. Kai's the author of Rattle, which came out from BOA Editions in 2018. And his next book, The Cloudmaker's Key, is coming out in the fall of 2027, also from BOA, my favorite publisher, growing up in Rochester, New York. So that's always fun to see. His work has appeared in Ploughshares, Best New Poets, and most recent issue of Rattle. His poetry film, Riding the Highline, received the jury award at the 2015 Napa Valley Film Festival. A former Wallace Stegner Fellow, he lives in San Francisco and is a lecturer at Stanford University. And here he is, Kai Carlson-Wee. Hey, Kai, how you doing?
Hey, thanks, Tim. Just wanted to say thanks for having me on, and it's a big honor to be on here. So
yeah, well, it's definitely my pleasure to have you. And we had Anders, your brother, on, of course, maybe 2 years ago, I think it was. So it's great to have you too. And I'm really looking forward to it. The book Rattle is just a great book, and it was really fun to reread it. I'd read it before, but it was great to see it again. And looking forward to this next book. Do you want to start out with a poem from Rattle?
Sure. So Poet at 24?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I guess to preface this poem, this one's a little bit of a self-portrait poem, and kicks off the second section of the book Rail, which has 5 different sections in it. So this is Poet at 24. In those days, the wind seemed to whittle me down to the root, round off my fingers as if I were some piece of glass in the evening sea. If you saw me at the grocery store picking through fruit, my backpack hanging behind, eyes gone slack as a turned-off TV at the Radio Shack in the mall, testing the peaches and ripe avocados, scratching the skin of a grapefruit for luck, you would barely have noticed the hawk's foot necklace I wore on a copper electrical wire, the ribbon of foil I glued to my beanie to block out invisible low-wave rays. If you saw me at a coffee shop, watching the crowd, scribbling notes on a wrinkled receipt, you would never have noticed yourself in those words, but you would be there still, in the softest rhyme, in streetlights spilling across your empty cup. You would be the simple wish of mist, the unnameable music that kept me alive, even after you turned to forget who I was and left through the automatic doors.
Yeah, so that was The Poet at 24 from Rail, Kai's first book from BOA. And that among other themes, the setting, I guess you could say, from that book is riding the rails or train hopping, or I don't know what the phrase for it is actually, but going from place to place on rail lines. So I'm really curious about what got you started into that. I lived for a long time in the town of Wrightwood in California, and right below it, there's one of those huge rail lines where there's one of the things where like you can see the train going all the way around on a loop, as it goes up the mountains too, and people come to watch trains all the time. And not one time viewing the trains there did I see anybody on one of those freight trains. And yet you and Anders were on those trains a lot up in the Northwest, I guess. So how did you start doing that? And I'm really curious to hear that.
Yeah, people kind of keep covert in when they're riding trains, and often, if you are riding trains, the way the parlance, it's like train hopping. A lot of people that ride trains call it just riding trains. But yeah, often if you are riding trains, there can be people on the train that you're on, because some of these trains are like 1 mile, 2 miles long, and you won't even notice. And so you'll ride for days on this train, and then it'll stop in a big city or at a big yard, and you'll get off and you'll look like a mile down the tracks and there'll be somebody else getting off.
Oh yeah.
And you don't even talk to other people that are on them. I don't know why that's part of the culture, but you kind of keep your distance a little bit unless you're, both trying to catch out at the same spot or something like that. And then you'll start hanging out together. But yeah, the way I got into it, my brother and I have two brothers. The three of us all grew up in this small town in southern Minnesota called Northfield. And we lived like 1 block from this cereal factory called Maltomeal. If anyone knows like generic brand cereals, Maltomeal's like one of those.
Yeah, sometimes it's the best, actually, I'd say. Better than the
It's
regular.
really good,
Yeah, it's pretty
and
good,
we
yeah.
ate a lot. We ate a lot of Maltomeal growing up because they came in the big kind of bulk bags. But it was the same flavor as like Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Lucky Charms, but just called something different. And we always could tell which flavor they were making. In the morning when we woke up, it'd be like a Cheerios day or like,
That's funny.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch day or something. But there was also a rail yard right there. So there was the cereal factory, and then there was a train yard, and it was a Sioux Line, what's called the Sioux Line Railroad. And they would, bring trains in and kind of box swap things. And when we were kids growing up, we would play at the train yard a lot. We would go on our bikes and kind of cruise down to the train yard and just check out the different things that were going on. And one of those was like hobo camps and people that were sitting in box cars. And usually we'd just find like the detritus of the camp. We'd find like a bedroll and like some magazines and some empty vodka jugs and stuff like that. And I think as kids, we just thought this was interesting and this was cool. And we would kind of, fantasize a little bit about what these people were doing. Most of them male, but what they were thinking about, what their goal was. And when we got a little bit older, my friends and I, we'd have these things that we called hobo days. And this is like, I don't know, we were probably like 11 or 12. And we would sleep over at one person's house, and then we'd go to the Safeway or whatever. And I guess it was called the More 4. That was the store in Northfield. But we'd go to More 4, and we would just buy some like hobo food. We'd buy like Spam and ramen and stuff like that. And then we'd sleep over at somebody's house, and we'd sneak out at night and kind of play act like we were looking at the trains and like hanging out in those territories. And it was just sort of like a fantasy thing. It was just like a way to make something out of this small town existence that we were living in. But that was sort of like, I think for me, like the root of it. That's sort of where I got interested in it. And then fast forward many years, and I went through a whole kind of lifetime as a skater and I did a lot of rollerblading. When I say skater, I mean rollerblading, but it's kind of the same thing as skateboarding. But I did that for a long time, and then I went through in college a couple mental breakdowns, which I write about in this book. And that's kind of the real reason that I started traveling like this, because I knew that I wanted to be a writer when I was in undergrad. I had known for a while that that's what I wanted to do, but I couldn't really imagine functioning in grad school when I graduated. I had been through some bad breakdowns where I couldn't read books anymore. I couldn't kind of think logically anymore. I couldn't have conversations like this kind of conversation that we're having now and about to have. I just couldn't focus on anything like that. So I spent about 3 years living kind of in the mountains out west, traveling via hitchhiking, train hopping, um, and I went to Europe for a while and kind of backpacked around. I lived at Shakespeare and Company bookstore for a while. That was like I like it's a different thing in Europe, but it's like train adjacent or traveler kid adjacent. And then eventually kind of got my shit together enough that I could think about applying to grad school, and ended up doing that. And so when I got to grad school, that was what I was writing about. I was writing about all this travel that I'd done, and I was trying to find a metaphor for the mental health experiences that I'd been through. And there was, that was the way I'd been living, but that was also um, the thing that had sort of helped me the most, like that I'd been through many, many, therapists, and I'd been on a million different medications, and none of that had really helped. And the thing that really helped me was traveling without an agenda, without a plan, and writing poetry. So while I was traveling, I was always carrying around like one of these moleskin journals and just writing things down, and like stray phrases, images that would come, into my periphery. That was really a part of my therapy, I guess, like that allowed me to kind of come back cognitively. And it really did take me about 3 years before I could think about academia again, or some, serious kind of intellectual pursuits again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a great segue to the next poem up, which is Depression. So maybe we should read that now.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Depression, after Robert Bly. I felt the roof of my head break and clatter to the floor. I felt the particles dance in the empty and electric air, turning around in circles like plastic bags caught in a draft. I thought the river would swallow me whole, and the seagulls would never stop sailing away. Now the deer bones rattle on the bare wall. The night winds rest and clouds advance on clouds. Days fall back inside themselves like water. Now the river takes its color from the weeds, and my friends are half asleep in their anticipated lives, dreaming in the vain styles of their age, painting their childhoods over their eyes, walking the ribbons of highways like crows. Now my mind moves back to my father's Easter sermon, walking alone in the dark garden, lighting the trash cans on Division Street on fire, watching the fat police lumber to the flames. And my 13th birthday, setting off flares in the train yard, scraping my name on the rust-lined door. What became of those abbreviated years? Now they slump inside these littered banks of sand. Now my face is hard to look at when I sleep. The words become like putty in my ear. Now the cold hours wake me in the night. The oak leaves fall and linger in the wind. The swallows leave the shadow for the bridge, and the carp float dead in the metal grates below.
Yeah, that was Depression, another poem by Carlson-Wee from his first book, Rail. And, the aspect of poetry that relates so strongly to mental health is really one of the things, it's one of the reasons why we do everything we do at Rattle, I think. It's people say, like, they don't like to say that poetry is therapy, but when we make art, we're making these connections deeper within ourselves of things we need to hear for ourselves in a way that really is therapeutic when it's used right. And I'm curious, like, what your perspective is on that and why it's helpful for you. Depression is such a deep well to try to climb out of. And I know even writing poems or enjoying poetry or something is difficult when you're in that state. So how is it that it helps you to climb out?
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to the cognitive reasons. I know that like therapists often advise people when they're going through things to write, to write about their lives, to write about traumatic events or whatever. And I didn't really do any of that type of thing in professional therapy that I was in. But I did find that I might not have been able to write an articulate essay or clarify articulate points at that time, but I could write poetry. Poetry it could be anything. It was a free space. And I had always liked poetry. I wrote love poems when I was in elementary school for girls that I had crushes on. And this is the real origin of my poetry writing is like I was a shy kid, and when I would develop a lot of feelings for someone, I couldn't really tell them. I would write them a little poem. But I did this for a long time, and I realized there was something in that came out of me when I was feeling a lot. I think that the healing that happened through poetry was related to that, but it was in that kind of like freedom of thought. There wasn't a judge, there wasn't a grade that I was receiving for this. There wasn't even a need to communicate effectively. I could just say whatever I wanted. And so some of the poems that I wrote during that time, because I couldn't really write that much, but I could write fragments of things. And some of those poems are really, formally weird and fractured. And, there's a lot of experimentation that I was doing at that time going through those experiences, not really trying to make an analogy through form about what I was experiencing, but just trying to like be honest about my thoughts and like what I was capable of at that time. Because, I couldn't read. And that was another part of it that was difficult for me is that I couldn't read books. So when I looked at words on a page, the language would kind of scatter like bugs. It would kind of slide off to the edge. And that, was really hard for me because I had been a reader. I'd grown up as a kid reading. And but I could write. I could still think thoughts enough to scribble things down. And so it was sort of like an empowering thing to write poetry. And I don't know if I say healing because I tried so many other things during that time. I was exercising, I was doing all this purging, I was eating a lot of vitamins and trying to go, I was fasting. I went on, 14-day fasts and stuff like that, trying to cleanse my body. And I was also a little paranoid about certain things at that time, but poetry was like true somehow. It had an element of honesty that none of these other things that I was trying really had. And so I think that's partly why I credit it with helping me.
Yeah, that's so interesting because there is, I talked to the psychologist James Pennebaker about poetry as healing. And there's a very clear connection between writing about trauma and healing. But I always feel like there's so much more to it than that, So it's interesting to hear that articulated, that the freedom of thought and there's something empowering in that. And I think that's a side of it too. Like they're two sides of a coin that both work. Yeah. Well, let's hear the next poem. I think Where the Feeling Deserts Us.
Sure. And this one is a little more of a love poem, in line with that anecdote that I just gave about writing love poems when I was younger. But it also is answering a question in a way that I'll maybe talk about after I read it. Where the Feeling Deserts Us. I wake somewhere on the outskirts of Portland. The crickets are singing. The train is refusing to breathe. Off in the distance, a truck gears down on a service road bordered in trees. The river beside me, babbling kind, headache, earache. All I can see of the field dissolves in a stale white blanket of moon. Nothing moves. Even the cold machinery seems to be riding itself in a dream, sliding away from the steel retainer walls, boxcars stalled on the next 4 strings. The train is my shepherd. I finger a dead leaf. Starlights dance in the field beyond my cage. We are never returning to the field itself, only the mystery hidden inside. Night after night in the speed of your leaving, soft of your veined hands tracing my thigh. The flavor of dust where the feeling deserts us. Maybe the blonde heads of needlegrass swaying, bodies of cows in the next field over. I pull up the blanket to cover my bare arms, cool air filled with the pressures of falling dew. This is the best I can give for a reason. The metal accepts you, whoever you are. The train you are riding will only go forward. The straight line is perfectly clear.
Yeah, and that's Where the Feeling Deserts Us. Again, we're reading poems by Carlson-Wee from Rattle. And I love that ending. And that's, I think, maybe a great explanation of how the train hopping is healing, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's a lot about, in this book, there's sort of a lot about romanticism and this feeling that I had at the time that I had to kind of wake up from a dream of like a romantic existence, a romantic life, or a life that was a success or was a worthwhile kind of way to spend your time. And so it's contending in some ways with that idea, with having to leave romance behind, having to leave this idea of love, or the sublime behind, or something like that. But it's also answering this question that you get a lot when you're traveling like that. Like, there's a sort of kind of like cultural criticism of people that travel that way, just hitchhiking, train hopping, whatever. There's this kind of idea that it's rich kids playing poverty, and it's kind of like a pose or a fraud of some kind. And you get that question a lot, but it's always kind of tinged with, why are you really doing this? What's the hoax here? And I think in a way that poem is answering that question for me personally, what I was going through at the time. But it's also answering it for everyone that's ever traveled like that. That experience of train hopping especially is so gnarly and so intense and so just gritty and terrible most of the time. Like, it's not romantic. There are romantic moments, but a lot of it is pretty miserable. And I think the question is always like, why would you put yourself through that, or why would you do that? And for me, there was just something about the massiveness and scale of industry that you're around when you train hop that you're just removed so much from other issues, other problems you have. And speaking about like therapy and healing, there's a lot of people that are train hopping that you meet doing that have like issues of trauma in the past of some kind. And I'd often run into like vets who were train hopping, and kind of like on the younger side, people that had been in Afghanistan or something like that. And, they didn't talk about PTSD, but I just found that interesting that they came back from some experience like that and then started hopping freight trains. It was just so weird. But the experience of that is so intense that you're just kind of forced to leave behind other issues and you can't think about it. You're so much in the moment when you're doing something like that because there's so much danger and there's like things change every like 2 minutes. There's a lot of weather that you're being exposed to and a lot of, stranger danger and cops that are coming and looking for you and stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, well, it reminds me, it's a different sort of, situation, but in that mountain town that I lived in, I mentioned before, it's right on the Pacific Crest Trail. And so they're all the people through hiking from Mexico to Canada, and it's in the southern side, so it's very much in spring, but there's a season where the backpackers coming through, and they're getting rides into town because like miles only count like on the trail. There's this whole culture behind it, which is fascinating too. But there is like, because I used to pick up the people hitchhiking and taking them back to the trail into town to buy like 5 hamburgers, and there is this sense of like, I don't know, a feeling of like jealousy for having the lack of responsibility in those moments, but then also the difficulty of what they're doing too. There's like it is like such a mixed feeling of like both awe and like reverence, but also like, how do you get away with doing this? And like, there's like an envy too. There's a lot of mixed emotions that play into that. And it sounds kind of similar for the train hopping stuff.
Yeah, totally same kind of thing, and with the thru hikers, I've encountered a lot of those people, and that's something I've always wanted to do, like hike the PCT. I've done sections of it and I've spent a lot of time like hiking in the mountains, but more like local places, not this like big push to like cross the country or whatever. But yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there. They have their trail names and, they kind of take on this new identity. It's like Cheryl Strayed changed her name to her trail name, her last name Strayed. So I know it's really significant for people and it's a huge part of their identities, but I've been envious of the thru hikers because like, that sounds like a great way to spend 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's always fascinating people. Like that's why it's so fun to pick them up as hitchhikers because they'll tell you like their story in 5 minutes, and it's always really interesting. And people from all over the world, and it's not just the typical people. It's somebody who has some kind of thing in the past that happened, or some kind of like yearning that they can't get rid of. And they'll explain that just like immediately talking to it. It's one thing I miss of living there. It was really fun to meet all those people. And look back to the poetry. You talked about writing poetry as like a free space where you had like total freedom. How do you go about then converting what was for you, it sounds like having that space to write whatever you wanted into something that you would want to publish and share? And where is the leap from something that I'm writing for myself because it's important to me to sharing this with other people and making it as important to them as it can be? How do you go about like making that transition? Because I think one of the things that happens a lot with poetry is that there's so much value in writing poems that we don't publish. And there's sort of this assumption that we're writing to sort of publish and make books and, become Walt Whitman or whatever. And we kind of devalue the writing for yourself side of it. And I think if more people wrote for themselves, the world would be a better place. We'd be so much healthier and more aware and more attentive. And so you don't have to make that leap. But then when you do, it is such a big leap that we sort of ignore often. So how do you make that leap from from writing personally to writing for others at the same time.
Yeah, no, Tim, I totally agree with that. I think that writing is such a great way for people to spend their time, and often they see it as a waste of time. I mean, in our contemporary culture that wants to commodify everything and wants success to be measured by how many, how much money you make or how many publications you have if you're a writer, there's a diminishing amount of attention and respect given for just the practice of it, just the act of it. And in my mind, if you write poetry, you're a poet. Like that's the peak of that existence or that activity. It doesn't matter what you publish. It doesn't matter what journals you publish in. It doesn't matter what awards you get. I absolutely despise the publishing industry in poetry and the kind of like rat race or rigmarole that we feel like we have to do to justify that title that we maybe are giving ourselves as poet or as writer or whatever. I've always kind of despised it, and but at the same time, I don't know. I want to communicate my writing with people. I want to be part of the conversation. I want to be talking with people through my poetry, and that's publishing and applying for these kinds of things is sort of how you do it. And I have very mixed feelings about it. I always told myself when I was younger that when I started writing poetry and I kind of realized what you had to do to get into MFA programs or become even just a part of the writing community, you have to do a lot of these applications and you have to do a lot of this kind of like drudgery work. And there's this sort of elitism to the whole thing too that has always bothered me. But I told myself, look, I'm going to try to do what I can do to get into this space, to get into this, what seems to me always to be a gated community that only a few people are in. You feel like you're always on the outside of the wall hearing the cocktail party on the other side. And you're like, how do I get in? And you go up and there's some bouncers there standing there like, how many journals have you been published in, And I've always hated that. But I've told myself right away, I was like, okay, I want to get into that party. But as soon as I get in, I want to turn around and start taking these walls down, because I think poetry just doesn't, it's not supposed to exist in that kind of rarefied, kind of elitist. I don't even know if it is elitist, but it certainly feels like there's an in crowd and an out crowd, and even within that, there are these little cliques that end up developing, and like people kind of wear their publication histories like badges on their chests. And if you go around AWP, you've been to AWP a number of times, I'm assuming, right?
Okay, I haven't gone in 10. I boycott it.
Oh, really? Okay, good for you.
I mean, it's so antithetical. It's really antithetical to everything we believe in, what we're founded for here. I mean, all the things you're talking about are stuff I've struggled with myself, and what Rattle was founded to try to provide some kind of place resisting that, because it is such a club. And, even in this, I've been doing this for 20 years. And even after 20 years, I'm shocked at how much of a club it is. I mean, totally. Rattle, I mean, we maybe don't brag about Rattle enough, but we have, we're the second biggest poetry magazine in English. I mean, we have 12,000 subscribers. I mean, that's huge compared to, there's like Paris Review and Poetry are bigger, and that's like it. And yet, like, I always never feel invited to anything. It's always because we don't play the games, and it's all game. It doesn't even matter. You fall in love with poetry because it's this beautiful language that's moving and memorable, and like that's what matters. And then at the end of the day, like that's not what matters,
right?
Or at least that's a small part of what matters. And it's just maddening, and it just over and over again happens. Which is why I haven't. I published one book, I haven't published another one, and my own book, and it's I don't know how to deal with that either.
Right.
So.
No, but what you've done with Rattle is a huge achievement. This community that you've made, and like I know it means so much to so many people, and it's really a great and vital thing in the writing world. But I also don't know what to do about this problem. Like I don't know what the solution is, and I I think it'll change. I think it's changing. The internet has definitely changed some of that. The online publication world has changed some of that. But you know, there's kind of like an icky feeling to the whole thing when you go to some of these events or whatever, and everyone's kind of dressed up and is like looking at different people, like who's who, and how much status do they have in the writing world. And I've never ever liked that. I've always wanted it to just be about writing and about the purity of the experience of writing poetry, because that's why we all do it. That's what the joy is. That's what the vital aspect of it is. And so it's kind of a mystery to me why it gets all weird.
Hmm.
We're all doing this thing for, I would assume most of us, like kind of pure purposes. There's not any money to be made. There's not any fame to be gained. Um, we all have to love it, but then because of like this idea of scarcity in the writing world, we all kind of start to want to cling to the small things that represent achievements or whatever. And I don't know, none of it matters. The
Hmm.
only thing that matters is an individual experience with language and the way that that is shared privately, person to person, soul to soul, across time and across other forms of boundary. I always I love Rumi, and I always think of that Rumi poem, which is kind of well known, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There is a field, I'll meet you there. And it's a kind of a fragment that I always share with my classes before I teach a class, because it's about boundary dissolution. It's about the idea of poetry being about the connection of souls, soul to soul, not about what's good and what's bad and what's published or not published. And anyway, I totally agree with what you're saying and what you know Rattle stands for. Even if you felt like you've been forced to be outside whatever this party is supposed to be.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think it's fundamental to being human that we make hierarchies. Like that's what we do. I think a lot of it has to do with like sexual selection drives and these primal innate things that we. But that's what we do. We're ranking everything all the time, and so
Right.
even this thing where we're all get into it for the pure way that we love poetry to start with. We see the hierarchy as it progresses. We see how to climb the hierarchy. And then my problem with it is that it guides the way people are writing,
Yep.
and it ends up writing this sort of, people call it the Mick poems from the MFA programs, but you're just flooded with this stuff that's so clearly been workshopped, and everybody's listing their MFA and their identity groups that they belong to, and the politics are all sort of monolithic. And if anybody disagrees with one point of that monolithic political ideology, then off with her head. I mean, it becomes this huge just race to nowhere. and
Right.
and I think it spoils all the purity that everybody started out with. 'Cause I think everybody did. Like everybody fell in love with one poem once and was like,
Exactly.
I want to do that thing that made me feel that way.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. And that's what it's always been about. And, you look at the history of poetry and the great poems that have touched you and have moved you individually, um, they they all are channeling something that is beyond any of those considerations, and any idea of careerism, any idea of you know journals and publications and whatever. And that is why we go back to those poems over and over and over again. The one poem that has been that for me, that the poem Depression is referencing, that is sort of written after Robert Bly. That's kind of in response to a poem that he has in this book, Silence in the Snowy Fields, which I just happen to have here, that's also called Depression. And it was a poem that I read to myself after I'd gone through a period after graduating from college when I was kind of like not writing. And this was after I'd been through the mental breakdown things that I'd mentioned before. But I was kind of testing myself to see if I had been writing during my undergrad years to just kind of have an identity in college, like I had told myself I wanted to be a writer, but I was I was like, was I just doing that because like that made sense in college to be an English major and this kind of stuff. So I tried to go without it for a while, and I went about 2 months without reading or writing any poems, and then I opened up this book and I read that poem, and I just burst into tears. It was just a very, very moving experience for me. And there was one line in there that he had that is, I think it's, I want to see nothing more than 2 feet high. And it's a poem about depression. And that line just got me. And I just knew that he had been to the same place that I had been, because you can't write a line like that without knowing what that is. And it just, that whole book was important for me, but that poem in particular got me back into feeling like this is something I need to do to kind of communicate with Robert about this stuff, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, really well said. I mean, being part of that conversation that means so much to us when we find it, is what we are all trying to do. And so you went, though, almost a decade it's going to be before your second book is coming out, The Cloudmaker's Key. So
Yeah.
were you writing in this period regularly too, even though, because it's a pretty long stretch for between books.
Yeah, I was, I was writing, 4 or 5 hours a day when I had a day to write. That's usually what I do. And I was writing poems and a variety of different things, but the book has it's weird because like Rail I wrote largely by the time maybe about like 2011. So I wrote it from like 2007 to 2011, and most of it was done then, but it didn't get published till 2018. And some of that was like, making the poems tighter, filling things out, like, but really that book is kind of like two books of poems. And this, I thought it would be so much easier the second time. I was like, okay, that's never going to happen to me again. That like 10-year fucking wait for a book. And then it just did, it was like, I got a lot of the poems done, years ago, but then, the publishing industry is weird. Timing is weird with those things. I was not really wanting to send it out for some reason. I just kind of wanted to keep it to myself until I knew that it was saying exactly what I wanted to say. Um, but yeah, I felt like, I was stuck in this next, like a repeat purgatory of waiting for this to happen.
Hmm.
It's only this summer that I got a call that BOA wanted to do the second book. And so but like you look at, Gilbert took 20 years in between two of his books, and like this isn't super uncommon. It's just kind of like unfortunate in a way, but it's not for a lack of writing and for trying. I think the one thing that happened to me with my first book is that the book is pretty like narrative. Rail is very narrative. It's kind of lyrical narrative style, and I felt like I was kind of like coming up with something when I wrote it, even though formally it's not doing a lot of obvious stuff. There's a lot of like anapestic meter that I use in that book to replicate like the rhythm of a train, and there's a lot of kind of internal rhyming, and the way that I'm building the poems, I felt like was something that I had kind of come up with. But then I had the experience where some people were kind of imitating that style and like ripping off pieces of those poems and like not crediting me and those kinds of things. And I don't know if other people have had experiences like that in the writing world, but it's not super uncommon. But I kind of felt like, okay, for the next project, I want to do something that people can't imitate very well, or it's just going to be too far in a different direction and in kind of off the wall that they won't want to imitate it. And so that's kind of one of the driving forces behind why I went in the direction that I went with in this next book. And but it's also kind of related to Rail in a way. It's not like a sequel in any way, but there's a continuation. It's kind of like the flip side of a coin. This is Rail was like the head side, and this next book is kind of the tail side, or the Rail was the day book. This is what James Joyce talked about with Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. He talked about Ulysses being his day book and Finnegan's Wake being his night book. And this is the Cloudmaker's Key is going to be my night book, I think, in that kind of way.
Yeah. Well, why don't you read a poem from it? Do you want to read Sermon?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, Sermon. Kingfishers called from the red mouths of silos and dove through the idling cows. I walked 20 miles of man camps in Williston, sleeping 2 nights in a railroad car to avoid the incredible storm. Around me, the rain walls deleted the sun. The thunder made everything shake. I stood in the lightning strikes, naked and shivering, lifting my hands to the black scroll of thunderheads, trying not to get myself struck. I prayed to my shadow shape. I prayed to the god of acrylic pens, Vicodin, god of the Red River dogs. I made up my own kind of gospel. I sang my own jingles and freestyle hymns, washed off my feet in the tire ruts, burned up my credit card, college ID. Just for the novelty, just for the swirls of plastic they left in a puddle of goo on the floor, a few swollen numbers and bubbles of red ink, the word guaranteed like a rowboat adrift in a lake of cerulean blue. Forces beyond me design this, I said. I surrender. I make myself pure in the stream. The corroded wall, faded graffiti signs bleeding, field mouse searching my backpack for grain, jumping up over my pant legs, skirting away to his hole in the dark. And then it was August, early September. The trees turned, the mile-high larches went gold. I walked on the ridge overlooking the third lake, diving off boulders to meet my reflection, climbing up scree fields, watching the sun leave a reddish remainder of light on the peaks, dancing around in the heather for no one, cutting the soft silver bellies of trout.
Yeah, as you can feel, that new book, that sermon from the forthcoming book, The Cloudmaker's Key by Carlson-Wee. And you can feel a similar rhythm, which I was going to ask about, because there are a lot of, I was trying to figure out the form going on in Rail, which I'd never, I'd read it a long time ago, but I never thought about that, I guess. And I noticed for some reason a lot of, longer feet, like avoiding the I am, which, we talked to Annie Finch in an episode, and she's got this whole thing about how the I am sort of took over poetry for no good reason, and we should use a whole bunch of other metric feet too. And in reading Rail again, that really stood out, and those rhythms kind of are here too, but in a much more elliptical, I'd say, mode of storytelling, where it's not as direct, narrative movement. It's leaping more. Can you talk a little about the style in more depth like that? About what you're doing differently with this book?
Yeah, totally. Well, like I said, in Rail, I used a lot of anapestic meter, and some of that was to kind of capture the idea of like a ballad form or an epic form. And, traditionally, I think anapests and dactyls were used a little bit more when writing longer poems that people were reciting out loud and memorizing and stuff. There's a rolling cadence to that kind of meter, and I just wanted that in Rail. So a lot of the poems, if you scan the lines, it's not like every poem that has it continuously, but there's a lot of Anapest in particular. And with the new book, there's some of that, and there's definitely like some of the same subject matter, but I am doing more leaping, like you pointed out. And this book is more trying to capture the psychological state of that mental health experience that I went through, or experiences. I wanted it to kind of be reflected in the form a little bit more. So it wasn't the Rail was more about like a little bit more about the adventure and the experience of riding trains and going out west and that kind of thing, running away from the Midwest. And the Cloudmaker's Key is kind of more about like a spiritual and or psychological state that the speaker or the characters in the book find themselves in. And in relation to Rail, I guess, I thought about Rail as sort of being like a horizontal book where we're kind of going through landscape a lot. And I thought about this book as being a vertical book where we're kind of like rising and falling a lot. And so the meter is maybe reflecting a little bit of that. There's kind of leaps up and down, or like jumps in it. But I'm paying less attention to the anapests in this one. So there's still going to be some of that, but it might be a little bit of iams in there too.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I should say at this point, if you're enjoying this conversation, please do click the like button. As always, there's about twice as many people watching live as have clicked like yet. And if I say that, the ratio goes way up, and then more people get to see this episode later. So make sure you click the like button wherever you're watching this, even after the fact on iTunes or Spotify or whatever. You can leave a review, which would be really helpful. Also, if you have any questions for Kai, please leave them in the chat window on YouTube. That's the one I watch the most. It helps if you put question in bold, like a couple people have just done, all caps, and then ask your question so I can see it when I'm scrolling past. In the meantime, Kai, let's hear another poem. It's a short one, Nomad Palindrome.
Sure. Okay, Nomad Palindrome. Maps, dogs, rail, stars. A Warsaw door, no sleep, no moods. I lived on flow, on speed, on spit-faced lonely tons. Red rum, tums, on bad dessert, sands. Eye level, dim as time. Stab on, sway on, span on, air wan, drawn onward, nowhere, no naps, no yaws, no bats, emits a mid-level E, yes, DNA stress, ED, dab, no smut, murders, no Tylenol, decaf, tips, no deeps, no wolf, no devil is doom. On peels, on rude, was raw as rats, liars, God, spam.
Yeah, so that's a poem that's very different from an actual word unit palindrome. And we got one regular viewer, Odd Writings, who writes those one word unit palindromes. I was hoping he's here today so we can enjoy that one. But that's a difficult and really different form to write in. You don't see that very often. And you're playing a lot more with that kind of thing in this book. How did you approach that poem in particular? I mean, finding it's one of those things where I keep reading it, and there's a rhythm is so natural to speech, kind of in a Lisp type poem, and you're thinking like, there's no way that you're pulling those words out and twisting them around to make them repeat in reverse. But then there they are. Every time you double check, it's true. So how did you go about approaching that poem?
Yeah, well, there's one word where it's not perfectly palindromic, but there's a reason for it. And I don't know if anyone in the chat can pick it out.
I don't know. What is it?
It's Erewhon.
Oh, mm-hmm.
It's a reference to like a dystopic novel that was written by Samuel Butler that is kind of it was instrumental in some of like postmodern Deleuzian thinking, and the book riffs on a little bit of Deleuze and some of his thoughts about kind of contemporary experience or existence or whatever. But anyway, there's that one word in it that's not perfect, but that's why. But yeah, that poem, I don't know, I've always liked palindromes, or I've been like kind of like curious by them about them, like and the longest palindrome that I knew of before writing this was Amanaplana Canal, Panama. And then some of the other kind of like kind of cutesy, kind of funny palindromes that you hear growing up. But I've always been interested in those kinds of words that reverse and that have anadromic properties that can do kind of like spell different things forward and back. And that was a little bit of a joke, and I don't know if it's a joke, but if it's a little bit of a reference in this book, the first book.
Mm-hmm.
So if you read this backwards, it's liar. And there's a quote by who is it by Jean Cocteau that goes all poets, or I'm messing this up. Poets are liars who always tell the truth. Something, I think I messed it up, but it's close to that. And there's the Plato kind of like reference to poets being liars and this kind of thing. And so that was kind of coded in the first book. And I had a few other words that I had just found over the years that I'd written down or thought about, like star and rats. And I'd always kind of known about those. And one day I just think I was cobbling things together because I was trying to find a form for this distortion of language that I had experienced. I was trying to find various forms. And I strung a few of them together, and I thought, I wonder if I could make a poem out of this. And spent a few months like thinking of different possibilities and kind of just cobbling things together in my notes app. And once I had about, like, I don't know, half of it figured out, I was like, I wonder if anyone else has ever written a palindrome poem. And so I Googled it, and I found that this other person in 1969 had written this much longer palindrome, not much longer, but maybe the longest palindrome poem called Edna Waterfall. And it's a really technically brilliant poem, but it sounds completely insane. It sounds like goofy speak, It's hard to read it. The rhythm's off. And the goal with this one was really to try to make a palindrome that sounded like a voice, that still had enough of a rhythm and a voice that it could kind of pass as a straightforward poem. And I don't know what was happening when I wrote it, and I tried to send it out right away, and I was just naming it Nomad. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't getting published, and I was like, how is nobody picking this up? Like, I just thought, I don't know why, maybe I thought too highly of it, but I thought that it was cool, and I was like, no one's picking this up. And then a friend of mine was like, well, maybe they don't know it's a palindrome. Maybe you need to name it that. And so I named it Nomad Palindrome, and then it got picked up right away by Agni. So I don't know if that had to do with it, but the goal definitely was to maintain the integrity of a voice. And even though, like, you can kind of, if you know palindromes, you can kind of tell it's a palindrome by about halfway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's go to some questions from the audience. And Katie Dozier, I wanted to ask this question, but I wasn't sure how to fit it in while progressing the show forward. So I'm glad she's adding it to this segment. Katie says, with how you said you feel about publishing in general, I'm curious if you thought about self-publishing and or NFTs. So Katie and I have been doing a whole bunch of stuff with that. We have 2 books that we just self-published on Amazon as part of Poetry Month projects. They're Hyben crowns. And then we also have done a lot in NFTs. Katie especially has done a whole lot trying to foster the idea of NFTs, trying to break the system, because that's what we really want to do, is get poetry back to the purity outside of this academic hierarchy. And NFTs are one solution that we think is there, but not many people understand. So have you thought about, in these long wait between books, have you thought about alternate ways of publishing, and do you think about that still?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's part of the reason that I have done some work in video with film, because it just takes so long to publish poems. So like I'll get bored waiting for responses from journals, and I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll work in video, maybe I'll take some photos, do something in photography. Maybe I'll, record the audio of this poem. I've tried to think about many different ways to publish outside of just going through the channels of journals. And I was in like a secret poetry society when I was in college. I spent 1 year studying abroad at Oxford, and we had this little secret poetry society that was very much like, Dead Poets Society. And we called ourselves the Banderlog Set. And we had robes that we wore, kind of like, cloaks like they do in that movie. And one of our friends bought like a whole pallet of mead, like just like, I don't know, if it was like 100 and some bottles of mead. And so we'd each drink a bottle of mead when we'd go to this poetry group, and we'd go out in these fields at Oxford where you're like never supposed to have fires, and we'd find these small secret spots to light fires and read poems. And it was really my best and favorite experience of poetry when I was learning about poetry and I was studying it, and I was reading, old poems and the Romantics and Shakespeare and stuff. And we had this sort of like guerrilla approach to poetry in general. And it totally like kept it alive for us. And otherwise we were writing essays about it in our lectures and stuff, and it was kind of dry. But I've always been drawn to that kind of idea of DIY publishing and doing something unique and doing something on your own. And NFT stuff, I've thought about turning some of my recent poems into NFTs, just for fun. Just, I don't know, who would ever buy those, but just for another way to think about them and another way to publish. I thought about self-publishing my book that's going to come out next, The Cloudmaker's Key, but I just wasn't sure what to do with it, how to go through those venues. It seemed like it's a lot of work to try to publish through a press, and then it's also a lot of work to try to self-publish. So I didn't do that eventually, but I love the idea. I love all the freedom that you might have for other forms and other styles of publishing if you go more that route.
Yeah. Well, it is such a trap because, the majority of book sales in poetry come from academia, of MFA students having to buy the book for the class, and then they, share the book and leave reviews and stuff, and that helps. But mainly it's that being on those syllabi that matter, and winning awards, which everybody's in the other academics are the ones giving the awards or picking poems for best American poetry. That's how it becomes this club, and it is really hard to do anything outside of that. But I'm curious about, because we haven't talked and we're going on a bit, but we haven't talked about your filmmaking much. And I do want to just talk a little bit about that, about your experience in turning poems into film. Because one of the things that you do, you have a few on your website. If everybody goes to that, Carlson-Wee.com, I think it is. If you go there are a few poem videos that are really well produced, and they don't fall into that trap of kind of like visually narrating the poem, and then it sort of just detracts from the poem. So can you, if people want to make video and include that, because it is the modern medium, that we use so much, and why not have more poems be video? How do you approach connecting the two that doesn't detract from the poem? Because what we love is poems,
Right.
and so we want the poems to be the thing that matter, and we don't want
Right.
the video to take away from that. And I think so often it does. So how do you approach making poem videos?
Yeah, well, I grew up making skate videos when I was young. So I mentioned that I used to skate, and that was like a big part of my like early teen life and whatever. But I always loved skate videos. I loved the energy they had. I loved the rhythms of skate videos. I loved the music that you would hear listening to or watching skate videos, and kind of listening to the soundtracks. And I found a lot of great music that way. And there's a kind of video art that exists in skate culture that is never really thought of as video art, but a number of really great directors came out of like skate video culture, like Spike Jonze and people like that. But I yeah, I mean, I think for me, the experience of life is just multidimensional. It's multi-form, it's multi-medium. It's not just poetry. It's also the voice and the phonemes and the recitation of a poem at night under the stars while you're drunk on mead or like whatever. For me, it's all of those things, and I think when we limit poetry to just being about poems on the page, there's a lot you can do with that, but you lose some of the other opportunities that you have with visual mediums and with auditory mediums. So I think for me, all of those impulses come into play when I'm thinking about like what to do with poems. And poem video or poetry film or whatever you want to call it just seems like a natural thing to try to do. And one of the things that's really important for me in creating anything is the idea of immersion and the idea of being in life, kind of a phenomenological idea of being present in the work as you're making it. And I used to write poems that I would time. This is like a long time ago, but I would be like, I'm gonna give myself 30 minutes to write a poem. And whatever happens in that 30 minutes has to be all that I do to work on it. Poem's done, I put the period down or whatever after 30, and the poem has to be finished. And so the practice of that would just make me really have to focus on everything, like really aware of my surroundings and the potential for things to be turned into poetry. And I think with filmmaking, there's a similar type of thing that I like about it where, you know, people don't question film as much or photography because it's just empirically there, like you're filming a tree and that's a tree. You don't have to imagine it through an abstract kind of removal through language. So, but for that reason too, some people don't like it because it's too literal. And I made the mistake once of sharing with Robert Bly, who I got to know a little bit before he passed away, one of my poetry films. And I thought he would dig it because he's done all this stuff with music and, like all these different theatrical things. And I was like, Robert, I got to show you a poetry film that I'm working on. And I played it for him and he just had this terrible reaction. He just hated it. He was like, no, 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 this is all wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought I'd ruined my relationship with him, but I think he just didn't really care. But he was so turned off by it because I think for him it was too much literal experience. It wasn't enough in the imagination. But he's a different generation, where they didn't have access to video cameras and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, I don't know, it's something, there's a lot of untapped place to be explored, I think, in combining the two. Katie says, video poem NFTs for the win. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the wonderful thing about that, it breaks that hierarchy, by completely changing the incentive structure. You know, I mean, you can have NFTs be publicly available if someone owns them. Then you're incentivized to share and collect, and they can grow in value. Whereas with traditional publishing, you're incentivized to hoard and hide everything. It's just completely the opposite. And so that's what we hope to do something with. And I think it's going to happen eventually. Anyway, we got to do a couple more poems. Let's do Free. And then after that, we'll talk about the deeper experimentation you've been doing, because you have some visual poems too. But do you want to read Free?
Yep, sure. All right. Free. You hike through the flat country, nameless with no friends. No moon to guide you. Stars like holes taken out of the sky with a drill. Deer bed down in the cord grass beside you, warm to your butane flame. Swarming mosquitoes take turns at your undressed hands, swelling them into mitts. You dream your dream beneath a rolling cloud of ash. You are the weight of leaves. You are popcorn spilled in the dark red seat. A ticket boy's broom could brush you away. You are more than years. You are doors burned down. You are chains without the swing. But this is your trick, the way you have lived so free. When the cop drives by, there is nothing to fear. When the light shines, nothing to see.
Yeah, that was Free, again, by Carlson-Wee from his forthcoming book, The Cloudmaker's Key. And so you sent two other poems from Cloudmaker's Key that really go far into visual poetry and experimentation. So we have Magic Eye and also Orion. And I'm curious just to hear what you're doing, because this is really pushing stuff in a new direction.
Yeah, totally. So, well, that poem that I just read, Free, has to do with the invisibility of mental health and some of the ways in which there's kind of a paradox with trying to attain some kind of freedom and material freedom or whatever in this country, and the character, the you character, which is removed from the I in some ways through the second person, kind of ends up erasing themselves, their presence, through this this effort to kind of go off grid or whatever. But this Magic Eye poem is playing with a similar idea. It's just in a different way. And so Magic Eye, this poem functions in two different ways. You can read it as a poem, and it has a lot of repetition, and it kind of has these lines that kind of do things subtly with language. But you can also read it as a Magic Eye poster, like a stereogram, which I don't know if people remember Magic Eye posters from the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Remember
like
those?
Staring at those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had like some books of those when we were younger, and we'd see the dolphin pop out and stuff. But there's a way you can do that with language too. And this poem becomes three-dimensional if you do the same trick. If you look through it and kind of blur your focus a little bit, you can see a dimension pop out, and there's a secret poem in there, kind of like a almost like golden shovel kind of thing that comes out. And so the poem formally is trying to be like a fun poem or whatever, but it's also trying to do this thing where there's the language that you can read that has a lot of like big ideas in it, or suggests a lot of big ideas. And then the poem that pops out in the third dimension, if you do the trick, is more of the honesty of what the speaker is contending with. And so the way that I thought about writing it is, I thought about being in therapy and all the chat and talk that I would do in therapy, to talk around the real issue, And so the poem that pops out is supposed to be kind of the real issue that the speaker is feeling, but can't bring themselves to say. So I don't know if anyone in the chat can do magic eyes or can see it, but if there's a reward if you can see it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was trying to. It's been a long time, and I was trying to make it. I could see how that works. I don't know how you do it though, and I couldn't hold it long enough to read the poem. I have to sit with it, not staring at a screen. I think to make it work. But do you want to? Do you want to read the poem and then this? I don't know if you want to reveal the secret poem inside too, or leave that to everybody staring at the book later.
Yeah, maybe we can. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Do we have time to read the whole thing?
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
Okay,
and
cool.
We'll have to wrap up after that, pretty much. But
Yep.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. It's a magic eye. Halfway to Bozeman, halfway to Bozeman, halfway to Bose. Cloudy it rose, the cloud it arose, the cloud it arose. My mind wasn't here, my min wasn't there, my min wasn't there. Blames death while, blame death a while, blame death a while. Sometimes I either, sometime I neither, sometime I neither. Storms wanted pill, storm wanted spill, storm wanted spill. A pattern I follow, a pattern I follow, a pattern I follow. Evil backwards, but evil backward, but devil backward, but word of flames, the word of flame, the sword of flame, the dirt-licked trains, dirt-licked train, dirt-slicked train, the arrow American, the arrow America, the narrow America. Flooded our fields, flooded our field, flooded your field. Earth, oh the angels, earth, oh the angel, earth, no the angel. Artworms rowing, heartworms rowing, here worms growing. Streams move miles, streams move miles, stream moves smiles. Sails through ions, sails through ions, sail through lions. It caught me alone, it caught me alone, it caught me alone. Your eyeless anger, your eyeless anger, you eyeless danger, howls toward other, howls toward other, howl toward mother. Quiets the lock, it quiets the lock, it quiet the clock, it sees light lapping, sees light lapping, see light slapping. The soy field green, the soy field green, the soy field green. Do you feel it now? Do you feel it now? Do you feel it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's Magic Eye. And then there's a hidden poem in there somewhere. And it has to do with the way certain words repeat and then they overlap to reinforce each other. And I'm trying to get the poem out, but I can't stare at it well enough. So
that can be the challenge for anyone in the chat or anyone in the YouTube comments, if you can see it.
Well, yeah, well, very cool. Well, I think I'm going to print it out and try it that way later on. Yeah, well, I think we're about out of time, but it's been so fun talking to you, Kai, and really interesting seeing where this new book is going too. And there's more creativity going on in poems we haven't quite gotten to. But it's been really fun talking and sharing this stuff. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. It's been an honor and appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, great. Take care. Yeah, that was Kai Carlson-Wee, of course. You can find all of Kai's work at his website, Kai Carlson-Wee, all one word, no hyphen, just KaiCarlsonWee.com. So find that there. Find, Writing the Highline. Nomad is a video poem up there too, I think. Some other stuff. Find out all his work and check it out. And then look forward to that forthcoming book, The Cloudmaker's Key. We're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines and, of course, reveal our prompt poet of the month. So sit tight. Oh, wait, no, I got to say first. This week's prompt was to write a poem about a time you found yourself somewhere you didn't belong, but have the poem turn to somewhere that you did. That is your prompt for this week. Poems about being somewhere you didn't belong. Now, that's your prompt for this week from Katie. And if you'd like to share a poem that fits that, all you have to do is email it to promptlines. That's promptlines, all one word, at gmail or rattle.com, promptlines@rattle.com. Then find the Zoom link, which to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. Just join the Zoom, but only if you have a poem that fits this prompt to share. Again, the reminder, It's a 1-page max, but also 3 minutes time on camera max. So make sure you're cognizant of that, being considerate of other people's time, so we can get to as many poets as we can. And join if you'd like. But if you just want to sit back and enjoy all the poetry, the best place to do that is wherever you're watching right now, because then you can see the poems on screen as we go. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. Back. Thanks so much for your patience. I'm here with our prompt poems editor, our associate editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I was really happy you chose my question to read because I really wanted to ask about NFTs.
Well, definitely. Well, I was definitely going there anyway, but you provided
really
the segue I couldn't find.
Yeah, it was
So
really exciting,
perfect.
really honest conversation. I love those things being said out loud that very few people are willing to say out loud. So it was nice.
Yeah. I mean, people don't want to say stuff, and that's kind of why one of the things that allows it to continue. The emperor with all those clothes on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we have a prompt poet of the month to reveal.
We do. And I will give another clue and say this poet has already won prompt poet of the month a while ago. In fact, the first time we ever did this, because this month's winner is none other than Sharon Ferronte.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, well, it's so great to see you. Yeah, and congratulations on another prompt poem of the month victory.
I'm very honored and excited about it. I said, "Oh my!" When I saw it was Haiku, I'm like, I said, "Oh my God, I'm not late, okay?" Because I missed that show. But I'm really honored. Thank you so much, Katie, for choosing it.
Yeah. Well, I cannot wait to hear you read it for us now, if you're up for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. What happens in autumn? Autumn fun. Bobbing for apples. He bites my lip. Fall colors. Today is sweet. Potato pie. Again, you've grown bitter. Kale. Corn harvest. Quietly closing the neighbor's gate. Catching a tired leaf. the veins in my hand. Pumpkin carving, finding my way to the light.
Well, I have to say, Sharon, it's hard to know exactly where to begin because there's so much I love about this. But I have to say, one thing is the immense range we experience in this. So we have, the funny, and then I think, again, you've grown bitter. Kale is hilarious and is one of those that's definitely, I think I even tried to approximate it last night because we had a kale salad and I was trying to tell the kids, like, oh, there's this great haiku. And I was like butchering it. But now I have it memorized, so I'll be able to report back. But then, of course, too, to end on that haiku that I think is one of my favorite haiku of all time. So meaningful. Really it just having gone to the silly place allows us to get to the really deep place, right?
I was, when I had the first two, and then I said, okay, am I going to go fun with this whole thing? And then I thought of the kale and the corn harvest, and I'm like, okay, I'm still kind of fun, And then I said, let me see what I can do. I wanted to do a pumpkin, of course, and a leaf or so. Like, I'm thinking maybe I'll kind of serious it down a little bit at the end, And the pumpkin carving, I'm like, oh. And I said, I got it. So, yeah, I did go fun to a little bit more serious. Yeah.
So those were the order that you wrote them, Sharon? I was going to ask about that because,
wrote.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that just the ordering of haiku sequences is something that, of all the haiku talk we've talked, we haven't really talked about that.
Sequences too much. Yeah, that's true.
I don't usually write sequence, only for you guys. Or unless it's a ranga or something like that. And I wrote the first one first. I had it for maybe a couple weeks or so. And then I wrote the next one, the 4 colors. So those 2 I put first. And then I wrote the last 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Then I wrote the last 4. But I had the first 2 when I started with them.
And I'm curious, Sharon, do you write haiku every day? I mean, I get to see online you post them so frequently. And then I think part of what makes your poetry so powerful is how much you're reading and engaging with everyone else's work, too. I mean, you're such a big part of the haiku community.
I used to write every day. Now it's a little harder to write. Sometimes I just post an old one, give it some light again. But I have been starting to write a little more frequently. Like today I didn't write, but I used to write every day. Now it's a little slower, but I'm getting there. Yeah.
Well, what you're writing is excellent. And you're doing a great job. And I'm sure that if you want to write every day again, you will end up writing every day again. We believe in you wholeheartedly.
We definitely do, Sharon.
Yeah. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for writing this. And I also want to encourage people, this is going to be the poem of the day on Tuesday. Share this with people who don't like poetry. And dare them not to enjoy this, because I would find it really hard. I think we need to bring back the poem in the pocket day and just bust out Sharon Ferronte's haiku to everyone within a 10-mile radius of us, because I think everyone would enjoy this, and it's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sharon.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Sharon Ferronte, and that was the poem of the month. That's going to be the poem of the day tomorrow on rattle.com. If you'd like to get that in your inbox before even seeing it on the website, all you have to do is go to rattle.com, sign up by email. At the very bottom in the footer, you'll see that. Type your email address in there, and you get a poem every day. A new poem we curated ourselves over the years, often a new poem from the current issue, but with all the other series that we do too, something new and exciting every day. So do sign up by email.
Tuesday is tomorrow. I'm still not adjusted to the Rattlecast being on Mondays instead of Thursdays. Saturdays.
I like
Sundays. I said the wrong day 3 times.
I do like having the weekends though.
I do too, especially because we got to go to the Renaissance Fair yesterday.
We did.
Which
It is a big
I've
one
never
here
done
in Texas. Yeah.
before to any, and it was quite the experience.
It definitely was. Yeah.
I'm segueing into my own prompt poem.
You are. Well, let's segue into your own prompt poem. So your prompt poem, once again, the prompt for this week was to, we'll put it back up on the screen here. The prompt for this week was to write a poem about a time you found yourself somewhere you didn't belong, but have the poem turn to somewhere that you do. Okay.
All right. Okay. So I went back to the Highbin for this.
Hello, Highbin.
Ever after. Perhaps it is unfair to say we didn't belong when we were the ones that chose to wear our outfits from the Renaissance Fair into the grocery store. A pearlized bee roped around my intact neck. My King Henry ferried a few rotisserie chickens into our wagon. Our maiden twirled her gown under the fluorescence. Our knight voted no on the grasshopper ice cream I found. Grandma was a mushroom in search of a salad. Robin Hood needed more floss. Our princess's cloud of a dress stormed in her carriage and demanded to race straight to the cheese balls. Beside the balloons, so many smiles confettied us. We issued royal waves to gawking little girls, picked a bouquet of sunflowers. I forgot my coupon for the apples, but we still bought a giant bag of Golden Delicious. And what if the real Anne Boleyn could have bitten into all of this? Royalty, the choice to be a green jewel in the crown of today. Dinner bell, the taste of laughter.
Yeah, very nice. Well, you mentioned in your Facebook post, and everybody should follow Katie on Facebook if they don't yet. But you mentioned that you loved how this it made us remember this day even more, more clearly. And it might be that one detail of going to the grocery store, still dressed in our royalty outfits, was we might have been forgotten a little bit amongst all the other things that happened. But now it's going to be, I think we're going to have to do it every year now. We go somewhere weird at least. Yeah. Still dressed up in the
costumes.
Regalia.
It was fun. Yeah, it definitely was, because I was thinking about because we're proofreading our next chapbook together. And that, of course, takes place with us each writing about a day, and you end up writing about your day and to really hone in on it. And I am grateful, because it was a really nice dinner we had afterwards. Charlotte, who is technically nonverbal, was actually saying a lot of things, and we were able to almost have a conversation about the weird things, and it was really, really memorable. Plus we actually own a dinner bell, so
we do. Yeah.
So I was really curious. I thought there was a much higher chance than normal that you wrote about the same thing this week, and I don't know what you wrote about. So.
Oh, I went to the same project I've been working on.
Okay.
Here.
Well, I mean the same project, of course, but the vein. Yeah.
Okay. Well, not, but I did for the haiku a little bit.
Oh, I'll have to stay tuned, I suppose.
So I have to stay tuned. Yeah. So this is part of the series I'm working on again. And this sort of the prompt really fit well for something I wanted to do with it anyway. I'm kind of expanding it. Not sure how much it all makes sense to everybody at this point, but it's going to be fun reading. Here you go. Imposter syndrome. Sometimes a stranger stumbles in through the double doors, thinking no doubt that the sign had said strange and not estrangement. Like the ebbing of an estuary whose floods conceal the food on the floor, this pattern in people provides perspective for analysis. It's another way to acknowledge the museum's mission is more than abstraction. Watch him wander like a wayward child trying to see in each section an absurdity. A wallet on the wall near a wooden cross recalls the banana from Basil. A brass bell without a clapper, a bowling ball. These artifacts to him aren't just the facts of their existing, exhumed and examined, but incidents of irony. So it is ironic. Nothing is strange but the stranger's struggle. Still in that struggle, he becomes an estranged. So that is Imposter Syndrome from a series of alliterative verse poems.
That was very interesting. We clearly need to just go to a grocery store whenever we want to write.
We definitely do. That's a good idea.
That's what we need to do.
All right. So those are our poems. Let's see what everybody else has to share with us. So let's go first to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana. It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. This poem I just wrote it in Carline this afternoon, so it's very new and probably needs a lot of revision. So I'm warning about that, but I thought it was really interesting that he started out talking about like train hopping, because I referenced my grandfather's train hopping in this poem of all days to do that.
Well, I love that you wrote this in the car line. Having just learned about car lines, whoa.
Yeah, it is. I thought that the car line was a Wrightwood specific thing, and because of the mountains and like kids can't walk home because like mountain lions and bears everywhere and stuff. But no, apparently everywhere there's just massive car lines.
And it's funny too because it was my first time ever like waiting in a car line because Charlotte is doing this like little play school thing for a few hours, and they want the kids to get that experience of the car line, even though it's like 2 cars. So I can say for the first time in my life, I waited in a car line as the driver for the first time today. So
yeah, it's kind of actually most of my poems get written in car line, but I usually write about like a third or 2/3 of a poem, and then the next day I'll finish it, and then I take the time to revise. But anyway, this one just it only came out today, and it's very
Oh, great.
So it's in rhyme royale, which is like ABABBCC. And I don't even have a title for it yet, so if you have recommendations for a title, please drop them in the chat. Yes. We never climbed a fence or passed a gate that told us to get out or to go back. We walked abandoned railroad ties, our freight, my grandpa's memories of home, and knack for pushing boundaries without blowback. But somehow, now we stood behind a sign, warning trespassers of more than fines. A net of fears wrapped tight around my chest. We couldn't climb the fence now to get out. Perhaps they would send someone to arrest the senior and 2 grandkids on this route. I tried to keep my head and look about. They'd see us on the railroad, and the ditch was full of poison ivy's garter stitch. But Grandpa brushed it off. He had a goal to find his boyhood haunts and share his life. He told of jumping trains along the stroll, the quarry, hidden graveyard, his penknife, of farming out and forts, a rich high life of fishing haddock, how their well ran dry, the fear of the asylum so nearby. At last we came out on the other side, my breath a school of fish that have got free. My grandpa with a slight hitch in his stride led us to the car, turning the old key. And Pratt and Whitney tossed them out. But we hold memories of Maromas and his joy. They cannot take the home out of the boy.
I love the ending and that form. It's a rhyme royale, is what you called it.
Rhyme royale.
Yeah, that's one I'm not familiar with. It's the rhyme scheme itself. Is that?
Yes, yeah. It's like between the Venus and Adonis stanza and the Atava Rima stanza. It's like 1 line longer than the Venus and Adonis stanza and 1 line shorter than an Atava Rima stanza.
Well, that is cool. You definitely are a student of the forms. I think it's one of those things I wish.
And car line too. That's wow.
There's actually a really great book that goes through and kind of like walks you through learning them. And I only just learned this earlier this spring. And it's by Susan Spears. It's Secrets of English Verse. I'll drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's super great.
Well, yeah, thanks so much. I was thinking there's the glossary of poetic terms, which we have on the shelf there. I was thinking I could...
I actually stole it, and it's in my office.
Oh, no.
It's not on your shelf.
Okay, well, it's in Katie's office. But yeah, we got to check that out. Thanks so much for sharing it.
Thank you.
Always educational, too, Christiana. It was Christiana Doucette with an untitled poem. So if you have any ideas, do leave them in the chat window. All right, let's go to Amanda Harris next.
All right, so... I had a lot of fun with this one, and it was one of those things where my inner muse took over. So I was actually really interested in this conversation about trying to go soul to soul. So I'm going to try to write with that idea in mind. Okay. Tunnels. Tunnels are great spaces for longing. I like to bury myself in a tunnel just so noise cannot penetrate what I'm doing. James Joyce said not to let family interfere with your writing. James Joyce said that solitude is a poem unbroken. Nevertheless, I miss the noise and the relentless hum of family. My feet miss them too. I tumble into the bare ends of where I have walked into. There is company. There is a lone voice reaching into the ends of me, hoping to pull something out. The sewer growls, like a saint I leave.
Yeah, well, I love the freedom of movement in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely let your subconscious run with it,
Yeah.
Amanda.
And I was very taken with the soul to soul discussion too. I think it's really nice to sit down at the page and have that sense. I think next time it's going to be nice to write with that in mind too. So
yeah, that two solitudes.
Yeah.
I love that. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it was Amanda Harris with Tunnels. Next, let's go to Jeff Stumpo.
Evening, everybody.
Hey, Jeff,
Hey,
great to
Jeff,
see you.
I've got to confess, in my prompt poem this week, I felt the license to refer to my daughter's dress as a cloud because of your threatening to storm. And I also have to confess that every time it looks like rain, I go, it's threatening to storm.
She definitely does. I can
do.
confirm. Yeah.
So for my poem, I timed myself at a little over 2 minutes, so very brief comments. First, thank you again for last week's prompt, the forms one, because I ended up writing a Doucette roulette after Christiana's form,
Oh, wow.
and I ended up writing a whirl coup after Chelsea McGlynn's.
How awesome.
So I already reached out to Christiana. I need to figure out how to get hold of Chelsea to send her the wordle coup that I wrote.
Well, I can definitely help you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For this week, all I need to say is this is all true, and that the haiku like thing at the end is literally quoting a poem referenced in the prose. It's not these aren't those. That's not my words. It's someone else's. So nothing after is nice and neat. There are two of us in this train car headed to Chicago, a man with a backpack and me, until at one stop, while he's in the John, two elderly women get on and, for reasons never explained, pick up his backpack, set it on the seat next to me, and take his seat. If I weren't as white as them, I'd wonder maybe if they were just so used to taking up space that the backpack shift happened out of habit. Whatever. Anyway, the guy gets out of the John, sees them, sees me in his backpack, raises eyebrows. I shrug, point at them, make a face that I hope indicates I'm clueless too. Plenty of room still, but he sits next to me anyway. Introduces himself as Randy. He just got out of prison that morning, is headed up to see his ex-wife, if she'll let him. He made her stop coming to see him. He'd get all emotional, go back to Gen Pop, get his ass kicked by harder men. He tells me he worked in the kitchen, and once they saved all their juice for a week, put it and some yeast in a thermos and hid it behind a refrigerator. They took it out a month later to see if it had turned to booze, and the guy who tested it went blind for a while. I have the etiquette to not ask him what he was in for, and I never find out. He asks what I do. I say, college. Say, poet. He says, hey, I write poetry, and pulls notebooks out of the backpack. The backpack might be nothing but notebooks. I read it all as we trundle along, Randy and the gentrifiers and me. It's not good, the poetry, but I'm not about to judge a man who's already been judged, who is just hoping some small part of the world will take him back in, and then I get to this one page. I get to this one page and 2 lines and spend the next 25 years wondering if I'll ever write something that sticks with somebody the way Randy does with me. If every train car is a notebook that maybe nobody but some college kid will read. They say no justice, no peace, and I say maybe since that conversation I haven't deserved a good night's sleep. Maybe that's what I've needed. After pissing in a steel sink for 5 years, you start to lose your faith.
Oh, that's a great line. Yeah.
that
Great
is
story
really
too,
interesting.
Jeff. Mhm.
Kind of like a found Hyben in a sense with that line being there.
Yeah, I've remembered those lines from his notebooks, and this was in like 1999 that I was on this
Wow.
train.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Well, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
neat.
Thanks for sharing
Well,
that,
thanks.
Jeff.
And very on
Thanks, Joe.
theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. That was Jeff Stumpo with Nothing After is Nice and Neat. All right, let's go next to a first-time caller. Joan Perkins is here.
Thank you.
Hey, Joan.
Well,
Great to see you.
this is a lot of fun.
Well, thanks. I'm so glad you could be
good.
here. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bellevue, Washington.
Ah, great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so glad you could join us.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have the opportunity. You had a conversation earlier about the importance of sharing your writing, And what I found is that when I share my writing, I grow. And sometimes the reader grows, and sometimes we grow together.
Yeah, well,
that's
definitely
great.
true, and a great way to think about it. Yeah.
Okay, this is called Conversation at the Southworth Fast Ferry Terminal. So here we are in Kitsap, two writers who know each other from the workshop circuit. Buses are scarce. You need a ride to Seattle. The route is simple. 16 to Tacoma, I-5 to the 405, dodging the ferry, Madison toward 4th, and you are home. But no, we end up at the ferry station. Driver and navigator sharing blame, each offering to pay the one-way fare, all $13 of it. Then we wait, first in line in the right-hand lane, while the sound around us foams and subsides. No sign of the ferry. Men in boots and day-glow slickers move the traffic cones. I worry about our lane, which looks to lead directly into ocean. And we talk about our origins, how you grew up Catholic in Nebraska, and me all over the place, my mother's faith varying with each new marriage. Why we don't go home now, and how we wandered vagabond from church to church, God oddly absent in so many of them. Then me about my brother, his 2 tours, PTSD, addiction, and divorce. Our wealthy country funding stadiums instead of better care for veterans. Though every sect has taught us from our birth that it's our job to care for one another. And does it matter really who is speaking? A Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew? As long as there's someone cares to tell us, as Jesus told the widow, don't weep.
Well, beautiful reading, Joan. That was Conversation at the Southworth Fast Ferry Terminal. I love the title, too. One note, it is supposed to be a one-page max for poems, just to keep it quick. So
we hope you come back next week
Definitely.
just with a one-page poem. Thanks.
definitely.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan.
Yeah. Well, no harm, though. It's new. But we just,
Well,
if we don't
said-
say anything, then people will start to think it's okay.
Yeah.
But you said 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's
And
still one
I
page,
should-
though, either way.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
But great. Well, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, wonderful. So glad you could be here, and hope you come back next
Yeah,
week, Joan,
thank
for sure.
you.
Yeah. So that was Joan Perkins with that Conversation at the Southworth Fast Ferry Terminal.
So many moving poems tonight.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go next to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be here. So I have a poem that's actually 2 trio days, and it's on the theme of getting older. And so there's a sort of then and now aspect to it, called Getting Older.
Okay.
Then, I ride the bus to Nassau County each morning to go to Chaminade, where I feel like a fugitive with a bounty. I ride the bus to Nassau County to that ritzy school where I know I won't be fitting in, 2 queens, too odd. Yet I ride the bus to Nassau County each morning to go to Chaminade. Now, I drive my Sonata to St. Mary's City, to the college where I teach and where sometimes I pass for witty. I drive my Sonata to St. Mary's City and see the river, not too shitty. Oh, I'll drive my Sonata to St. Mary's City to my college and I'll teach.
Definitely a fun poem there, Brian.
Yeah, I didn't see the shitty line coming, you know? I didn't see it coming.
Otherwise, so many itty words.
I think you and Christiana need to have a rhyme off live.
That's a good idea. I'll lose, but it'll still be fun.
Oh, thanks,
Right.
Brian.
Yep, thanks, Brian. Great
Yeah,
to
it
see
was
you.
fun.
Yep, that was Brian O'Sullivan with Getting Older. Next up, let's go to Shiv. Shivpreet Singh, how you doing?
Hello, how are you guys?
Great. It's great to see you.
Fantastic. Great to see you as well, especially given we had a little bit of an earthquake yesterday at home.
Oh, really? How big was it? Yeah.
It was so small, it didn't matter. But it was right under our house. So the epicenter was right here.
That'll do it, yeah.
We shook a little. So this poem is about that. And it's about finding home in a place where there's earthquakes. California. All right. After shocks of the first big one, Tweety falls in his cage. I notice the birds outside scattering. Balu barks. I hear my almost teenager pacing upstairs, her first big one. Calm down, I say calmly, as if I were calm. My phone says it's 3.8. Then the epicenter, I think, must be personal, not off the coast, but here in the shallow dark right beneath us, where the plates keep gossiping. After dinner in the car, my daughter says, there have been so many. Even the car engine is an aftershock now. And when Balu thumps, the needle in her chest jumps. I know that song of mine when I was a teen, months after the first California jolt, the flight of a bird could feel like a fault line. Tonight, as I slide into bed, my phone shakes. A poem has cracked into home, but comes with a tertiary tremor, sharper than a no. Could you clarify a few things? The editor asks, as if I can unshake a trembling pain, as if I can x-ray fractures with my eyes. Do I comply or let the obscure things stand? How long does it take to recover from making one big thing? I switch off the lamp. The room is still, but under the pillow a coin of magma burns, clarifying. And in the sky of my mind, a neural storm is lightening. I guess this is home, a personal planet in the making.
Yeah, we can see the fault line running through that poem too.
Yeah,
I've picked the hemistitches from you. I had to.
Well, thanks. Very cool. Yeah.
very
Well,
cool.
Congratulations on experiencing that.
Yeah, I'm very glad you're here. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I don't miss moving to Texas.
Yeah, I was always there too. When we were in California too, I would feel like the slightest movement, be like, I just felt one, and Tim would be like, no, Katie, and I'd be like, no, I'm sure this time. Like, I'm like very like I can feel any imbalance in my feet for some reason. So it was always
Well, it's weird. All the different kinds, the little quick jolts, the rolling, oceany ones.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, glad to be done with that.
Glad
Same
you're safe.
fault, different area code, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Good
thanks
seeing
for
you guys.
Yeah,
Good seeing you,
great
Shiv.
seeing you, Shiv.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's Shivpreet Singh with Aftershocks of the first big one. Yeah. Let's go next to Nivedita's here. Let's go to Nivedita next.
Hello.
Hi, Nivi.
Hey, Nivi.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Good. Great to see you.
Good to be here. So, in line with everybody, it's a poem about searching for home. And are there are lines here that mention not being able to breathe, which is a reality here, sadly, because for the past 4 days, the AQI here has crossed 550 and is touching 600. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, over 200 is like, don't want to go outside. I don't play tennis.
Oh wow.
Ours never goes below 250.
Oh,
so
wow.
in Delhi, especially, it's like it's always above 250, and then it just keeps rising from there. So yeah, it's been a space.
Yeah.
So, searching for home. I walk through streets of cold, unyielding stone as the city's breath surrounds me. I feel hollow. Glass towers reach upward, blocking the sky in this unfamiliar landscape. I search for meaning. Concrete walls confine my thoughts, my fears. In this unfamiliar landscape, I search for meaning, longing for a place where my spirit can breathe. Faint echoes of distant voices call to me, making me long for a place where my spirit can breathe. I realize home is not just the streets I walk. I turn towards the warmth of familiar ground and realize that home is where my heart finds space, where love is found.
Well, great definition there, Nivi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so
Thank
much
you
for
so
sharing
much.
that. Yeah.
Thanks, Nivi.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep. Have a great day.
You said
Thank
I was
you.
afraid it's going to get wrong.
All right. Yep.
Thanks,
Bye, Nivi. There's Nivi DeKarthik with Searching for Home. Yeah, and hope the air quality gets better soon.
Yeah.
It is, you know, with the smoke from the wildfires is the thing that gets us up there. Let's go to Michelle. Rosario, that is. Michelle Rosario. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hi.
Hi, I'm okay. How are you guys?
Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
It's nice. It's nice to get the chance to read one of my poems. So this one is Duality.
Okay.
I am torn between prescription labels and sticky notes full of jotted lines and mindless doodles. My fingers dance at the rhythm of QWERTY while my pen twirls with Dickinson. I read Collins, De Burgos, and Poe while my colleague recites the PDR. We count pills by 5 to work faster, while I use haiku to slow down. And when I do slow down, I wonder, what am I doing with my life? Because the girl who hid in the humanities building, after being done for the day with all the science, seems to be fading away in the secure job her parents wanted her to pursue. Can I speak to the pharmacist? The request brings me back to reality, a soft voice almost lost in the cacophony of the printer, the Keurig, and the phone. I can tell my patient is apprehensive as I walk toward the front counter. Dígame cómo puedo ayudarla, I politely say, which calms her down and brings a smile to her face. For this seemingly white pharmacist speaks the same language as hers. I help her with her medications. We talk about family, food, and the economy. Muchas gracias. And she gives me her blessing, like my grandma used to do when I was little. And I am the one who should thank her for reminding me that any place where I can help is the place where I belong.
Oh, well, what a beautiful message. Yeah.
Really great
Thank you.
details. I really felt very in the moment of that one.
Yeah, definitely. The scene emerges. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Michelle.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Michelle Rosario with Duality. Next, let's go to Matt Joseph.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Matt. Great to see you.
Fun. Great to see you as well. As always, I feel like I could spend an hour with each of these poems, but so be it. So when you talked about writing a poem about somewhere where you didn't feel you belonged and then where you belonged, and this has echoes of what Michelle was just talking about. So my poem, and I no enigmatic or subtle titles for me anymore. I just go right for my
Nice.
next poem will be called My Right Toe or something like that. So this one is called Medical School. It might as well have been Mars or Uranus, that name still making me chuckle as much now as when I was 13, since I felt like I was bathed in shit most days, like I couldn't breathe, like my eyes might be sucked from my skull by the vacuum of my insecurity, my body imploding the way it would were I standing on a distant planet, naked as a jaybird, which makes no sense since jaybirds are feathered, not nude. Just like I made no sense to myself most days, certain my presence was the product of a misplaced pen stroke, an errant box accidentally checked, me, a lover of language, surrounded on all sides by men and women with wolf-trap minds, a flibber to gibbet, wondering why his teachers and classmates were carved out of steel and ice, which isn't fair to them. I'm sure some were as freaked out as I was freaking out, wearing their imposter hair shirt the way Lenin wore his Nehru. But it was never about fair. It was about not being the slowest in the pack, with a bear at all our backs, until the next test, the next race, the next bear. Always wondering if the night sky would empty out its drawers, trade its constellations for a broken chess set, and the answers to everything. Tiny doorways in every back alley of every dead end of our body opening to reveal their secrets, but not for me. It was never a homecoming, no parade or jazz trio riffing to my rhythms, until one day I stepped into a room where a patient was crying for reasons I couldn't understand, not yet. And a voice whispered from behind all their closed doors, "It doesn't matter how much you know. Of course it matters. But even if you know it all, there will always be faces crouching behind faces, mountains rearing up beyond mountains, stars waiting to wink their majestic why, skittering in the shadows cast by those shouting because." And the moment keeps coming, every day since then, drowning in a sea of certainty, an ocean of knowing, only to be spit out, gasping onto a beach where the sand is blue, the sky is white, the clock sides sideways, and everywhere, waiting to take me in, everywhere, the mystery.
Yeah, another great journey of a poem.
Yeah,
Went a lot of
there's
places.
so many really strong lines in that poem that, like, too, sometimes when someone's reading a poem that has particularly strong lines, I'm trying to hold the line, but then I would not be able to hold the line in my mind because you get to the next one and be like, oh, I really love that line too. It's like found myself like,
Awesome.
yeah, that was really neat. And that's hilarious about the naked as a jaybird thing.
Never made any sense to me. It never made any sense. So
So
anyway.
the poor jaybird, like, what kind of past does he have?
what did he do, man?
Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate this.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was Matt Joseph with Medical School. Next, let's go to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared, great to see you.
Good to see you. Hi. So I've got The Dancing of the Dead.
Okay.
One November night, I saw the dancing of the dead. They were strutting in the moonlight in the graveyard across the street from Weller's farm. Overhead, the nakedness of the oak trees tried to tell me to turn away, to give the dead their privacy, but I persisted straight ahead. I watched them at their play. Hoping no one would notice me, I joined the dancing of the dead. More of them rose up like crop. The turning of the time-worn heads unnerved me, and I missed a step. Go back to your own kind, they said. But the music didn't stop. I spent the evening dancing with the dead. They sang of how the very oaks will die, and how morels will rise up from the roots, and in that time the dead will dance. The dead will rise and harvest all the fruits of patience, the measured why that moves the dancing of the dead. The dance grew livelier and more confused as night grew on. They sang that winter soon would spread, forgetting to forgive the used and useful that like crows on power lines hang to judge the dancing of the dead. I danced till I belonged. The gibbous moon went down, and at the fading of the song, although I couldn't mourn their God, I turned my back on town and slipped beneath the living blanket of the sod.
Yeah, I love that last line. The rhyme with the God and sod is really cool. And
Yeah,
cool refrain in that one, too.
Yeah, it's definitely very entrancing, Jared.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Jared. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jared Campbell with The Dancing of the Dead. Let's go next to Tina Deniclaw.
All right.
Hey,
Hi.
Tina. Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you guys too. I'm actually sick today. That's why I've been here.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. It's just it occurs to me when you're on a Zoom meeting, you don't have to be dressed, and you can also wear 4 shirts, and nobody knows if you don't tell them. So I'm going to give a little bit of context to my poem. So everybody knows my husband's Navajo, and he was born and raised on the reservation and was raised traditionally. And we were married decades ago. And at a time when strangers thought the right thing to do was to let us know that they disapproved, and sometimes in really unkind ways, and from both sides. And so that's what I was facing when I married Wilfred. But even so, gosh, I can't. I'm not going to be able to get through this one.
No.
I was born a warrior, like my father before me. Vikings, blue-eyed, defiant, and fearless. Vikings. I set my foot on a stone next to yours and knocked my arrow with intent. I hear the fleshing hiss as my arrow hums along its path, true and unhindered. All these years still a beacon, hissing through the air beside me. I'm cold. My whisper as you sleep. You slip your arm around me, and I enfold your forearm to keep you warm as you keep me warm. That first arrow has passed as promised through decades. And I find myself here in this moment, home with you, like a wren in the midst of winter, settled on a branch in the snow.
Well, very nice image to end on. And yeah, heartfelt
you.
poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing
Thank
that,
you,
Tina.
And I have a couple of images, but I don't know if you have time. It's
yeah,
okay if there's no time.
Yeah, well, I think we are kind of trying to wrap up.
Yeah.
But thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Tina.
Yeah, thanks,
Sure.
Tina. Yeah. That was Tina Denniclaw with I Was Born a Warrior. Okay. And let's go to Dick Westheimer.
Hello, I will be brief in my intro because I have the longest poem I've ever brought
Wow.
to prompt lines. I always feel like I'm taking up too much space when I write long poems.
Oh, definitely.
But I
This is
wanted
a
to
one
do-
page. This is legit.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong.
yeah.
This is
Oh,
special.
it's not about taking up too much space here, but just in the world. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to give a plug for the Facebook prompt poems group that Katie set up. It's a great place to get feedback for poems. You have to sort of ask for it. People have to know you have a thick skin, and they offer great edits, and it's a great place to read other people's poems and get in conversations with them about poetics.
Well, Dick, you've been leading the charge on that, so thank you. And also, I have to say, I think you should take up more space in the world, not less.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah, well, you'll have to undo 72 years of insecurity, you know.
I'm trying to.
Thank you. So just a quick note on the writing of One Way a Poem is Right. I wrote this over and over again in the very flat prose. It never worked. It wasn't a poem. And then I was out and I saw the cedar tree that arrives in this poem really early, and it transformed the experience from, telling what happened to conveying the feeling, which is, I think, how poetry works best for me. So, April 1972, and Bobby J takes me to his fave gay club. We went to NYC to see the Allman Brothers Band, my buddy Bobby J and me. He asked if he could take me to his home, the Ninth Circle, before the midnight show. There I was, a shabby cedar in a forest of dazzling sugar maples and ginkgo trees, a homely little star in a sky of nebula and primal galaxies. The floor was sticky with spilled drinks, glittered and with sequins rubbed from the crotches of bejazzled jeans. There was a tiny black and white dance floor in a corner, kind of hidden, and I was amazed at those leather-clad men slow dancing as if no one was watching. Bob said he knew I might not be into the scene, but wanted me to feel the love of the queens and kings that raised him up since he was a teen. There were graybeards and blonde, braided hair and butch cut. They hugged Bobby like a child come home from college, which he was, and welcomed me, took my two hands in theirs, and smiled as a dimpled granny would. Later at the concert, the guy sitting beside me in the balcony yelled that he could fly. He grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. Bobby pulled me free, and the flying guy ran to the rail and landed in row D below. Outside after the show, for the first time since we'd known each other, I gave Bobby J a hug, and for that moment I belonged in his arms, and he belonged to like he belonged to the men in the club.
Yeah, well, great story for the prompt for sure, Dick. Yeah, really well told.
And this was less than 3 years after Stonewall, so the gay clubs were still getting raided by police. They were not altogether safe places, but they were definitely the safest places, especially for gay men to go. So it was it was an eye-opening experience for me. And
yeah. Well, definitely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Dick. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was Dick Westheimer with April 1972, and Bobby J takes me to his favorite place. Let's see. And last but not least on the Zoom, I believe, is Carla Schwartz.
Hi, everybody. I popped in at the end.
Oh, hi, Carla. Glad to see you. And in pink, no less. Great
in
color
pink.
choice.
And so here I am with kind of a haiku-ish sequence of feelings of not belonging and then belonging.
Great.
Fragments of belonging. In a room full of talkers, reading my book. At the ball game, holding your hand. At my husband's reunion, writing a poem. On the way to the hospital, riding a bike. At town meeting, lying down to nap. Family portrait, I teach myself to smile. Among strangers in the bar, music, listening.
Yeah, well, I really like that. The crash of all those things together, I think works really
very
well.
Interesting. I think I really like the family portrait. I teach myself to smile too. I think that's very strong.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you said haiku like. I think that one definitely is a standalone haiku that's great. But then there's an interesting, contrast going back and forth for how to take them.
And also, thank you for the excuse to that reminds me to say what I meant to say during Sharon's thing, which is that you can write haiku or a haiku sequence to any prompt except for one that's like write a sestina. Then I'm going to be like, the haiku sequence doesn't work here.
Or,
but you
or
can
a
do
challenge
that.
for like Christiane Doucette to write a haiku sestina
It's
somehow.
coming now. but thanks, because that's great. I have to say too, Carla, you had really great poems in last month. You had multiple ones that were right up there. So thank you.
Thank you. I was really appreciative of your message to me.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Carla. Yeah, great to see you. Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz with Fragments of Belonging. And indeed, that is everybody on the Zoom. Let's take a quick look at what Ted Bernal Guevara has for us. He sent a poem called Wonderland. He says, last year I went to Illinois for the holidays. Fun.
All right, that's an endorsement.
Okay, let's see. So this is Culture Clash by Ted Bernal Guevara. Here we go. Culture Clash. Chicago had wide sidewalks that welcomed winds meant to spackle your face. Last Christmas I stood on such. That air had claws like a transformer. I waited for my sister to pick me up before anything viral would. Breath I could see again. Throwing profanity, I saw those too. When she finally pulled up, I got into her Mini, toasty enough to have an immediate planned conversation. It's the sister who likes to feed her guest first, to her liking, always something fun, exquisite, and international. It didn't matter if my neck had a scarf or my forehead had a message board that said, I'm here in your Frigidaire city. Take me home first, please. But she described me to me, Autour, a nice place less than 20 minutes away. Knowing her house was an hour still, I clutched my naked hands, rubbed them, and said, is that Cambodian for Hooters? She looked at me strange and drove out into traffic and tundra. That is really funny.
Really
Ted.
funny, Ted.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed
a lot
that.
of funny poems this week.
It's
but
like
but
a
Ted takes
National
the cake.
Lampoon's Christmas.
It is. That was very enjoyable. I like that story.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. It was Ted Bernal Guevara with Culture Clash. Let's see. That's going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight. Wonderful episode. Wonderful poems. I'm really glad everybody shared, and looking forward to seeing what Katie pulls up for next month's prompt poet of the month too.
Yeah.
All right. So we have some haiku we're going to close out with. And where'd you go with your haiku this week, Katie?
I went to Charlotte, our youngest.
Okay.
Riding the butterfly, she learns new words. So she also literally rode on a butterfly ride at the fair, which is part of this. But then also she's been learning new words lately, which is really exciting.
Yeah, really wonderful pace.
And it kind of feels the way, like her learning new words kind of feels like the way a butterfly moves around, where it feels smooth and then it's not, it's landed. And it's so,
yeah. I was wondering how you're going to say that because it's spread out. So I was like, the butterfly.
Well, I was hoping to sound more elegant than that. I don't know if I did, but
well, it's great. Well, I love that haiku, and it's just such a a beautiful thing to see and to capture again what poetry does. Well, here's mine. Also from I was thinking about writing about this actually, but I saw yours first. So I was like, oh, I can't write about.
You saw my haiku first.
I did, but I wrote a few other ones, and this is the one that I amused myself the most with. It's a rare political. A politico?
No,
yeah.
do not make that a thing.
Okay. No, don't. Please don't. Okay, so here we go. But the same fair, I should say.
Yeah.
Different ride, same girl.
Okay, Charlotte's the topic
but very
of conversation.
very different topic, though.
Yeah.
Here we go. Government shutdown, the donkey handlers rake. There you go. Government shutdown, the donkey handlers rake. That is our haiku to close out the show. Inspired by... the poor guy who had to follow around the donkey.
There was a carousel with animals on it, and the girls were riding animals, and the handler had to clean some things up.
Definitely did, yeah. But anyway, it was actually a pony, but donkey worked better. Poetic license.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the haiku for the week. Let's see what next week's prompt is going to be, and it is what, Katie?
Well, listeners of our unaffiliated with Rattle podcast, The Poetry Space, will not be surprised to find out that we are going to write an essay that includes an allusion to at least 5 senses.
So what is an essay, Katie?
An essay, why, you're going to have to listen to Poetry Space, Timothy Green.
Yeah.
It is Jane Hirschfield's form. It is sort of a mishmash of the word actually, like essay is in terms of like with alloys and metal, and to take something scientifically, which I should not be the one describing what this is between the two of us. And then also referencing an essay. So to look at that. So what we want to do too is look at Jane Hirschfield, a poet that probably you've heard of. And if you haven't, you should check out her Rattlecast, which was 211.
Yeah, good memory. 211.
211.
Yeah.
And look at that. But it's on the Poetry Space. We had Jane on last week to talk about, and she's going to have another episode on Friday, but to talk about this form. And why I think it's really exciting and important is because I think it's a good way to look at all poetry and how we approach writing poetry in general. So
yeah, and how I would describe it is, a friend of the show, Eric Campbell, he likes to call his poems vertical essays as an excuse. I tried to bring this up in the episode, but they never fit. But he does use this as an excuse, Eric, if you're watching, to not write very often because it has to as much goes into the poem as like an essay would. But really, it's a way to take the kind of like mindset of an essay and find and create lyric moments within that. So a lot of these poems that Jane writes, she does a lot of research into the topics she wants to write about to try to figure out her way and feel her way through, but through kind of knowledge and an understanding of the different angles of the topic, and then finds the lyric moments within that, and then that becomes a poem.
Yeah.
And so it's a complicated thing. Do listen to the Poetry Space. You'll hear some great ones. Jane had one to Wetness, an essay from Rattle last spring, so you can check that out too. But also, the ones she read on the show are great.
There's also too the week after, because I did an essay prompt before, and so those of us who have been doing this for a few years have written one in the past, so you can check back that episode too. But I love that you get to look at something in a bunch of different lights, and so with doing at least 5 senses here, I'm really trying to stretch our poetry muscles. Let's get out of just the realm of sight, and really explore, and hopefully be able to really understand what something is better through using all of our senses like we try to in actual life. we should do it on the page too.
Definitely, yeah. Well, it's going to be fun doing that. I don't know how I'm going to fit it into a literary
I don't
verse.
know.
I think I have
It's
to
not
bail out on
kind
this
to
one.
you.
No, it's fine. I write other
I was
poems
thinking
too.
about that,
but yeah, it's
the
going to be
prompt
fun.
must go on.
Yeah, it must. Yeah. So yeah, that's your prompt for the week, though. Once again, write an essay that includes an allusion to at least 5 senses, and that's an essay, as they say in the United States, or say as they say in the UK, but not essay. It's a different word. So look that up. ASSAY for all you listeners out there who don't see the screen right now.
And are about to go listen to the Poetry Space.
And are about to go listen to the Poetry Space where we talk all about it. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be... No, that was this week's. Next week's guest is going to be... Julia Kolchinsky. So
great.
yeah, Julia was a guest a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and but she's published 2 books since then, I believe. And her last one, Parallax, is about parenting and a whole bunch of other things. She's just wonderful. We saw her read at the. Actually, I said we didn't go to the AWP, but we went off-site to the AWP last year when it was in LA.
Yeah.
And saw a reading with her and Nancy Miller-Gomez, another Rattle alum.
And then ran into Donna Cadismore in the bathroom.
We definitely did,
listener.
yeah. So we never were at the AWP. We were swirled around a little bit.
We were in art gallery on the fringe.
But she is a great reader, performer of poems, and writes great as well, as you all know, because she's published in Rattle a bunch. Her new book, Parallax, that's Rattlecast number 318. Your assignment to write an essay that includes an allusion to at least 5 senses. It's all going to happen next week, Monday, November 10th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later.
Good night.
Bye.